The day began with dust motes slow dancing in a slant of light over the Quartermaine study, as if the house itself were stalling for time. The mahogany desk bore the familiar weight of ledgers and family photographs, a museum of smiles from seasons that had forgotten their quarrels. Tracy stood there like a curator at the end of an empire, turning a key she had kept in a hollow of irritation and love, and lifting the lid on a legacy that refused to lie still. The file she wanted was buried in the quietest corner, the one Monica always reserved for documents no one could be trusted to touch. A ribbon held the envelope together, that particular shade of hospital laundry blue Monica favored for its stubborn practicality. Beneath it, folded as carefully as a goodbye note, was a message written in Monica's hand. Not instructions, not sentiment, anticipation. Monica had seen turbulence gathering the way a physician feels the weather of a failing heartbeat. She had hidden the true testament in Alan's belongings because she understood the choreography of Quartermaine ambition. She knew that Tracy, fierce as iron and allergic to pretense, would be the only one who could follow the thread through a knot of elegant lies. The handwriting steadied Tracy's pulse even as it sharpened her purpose. It was not nostalgia that warmed her, it was recognition. Monica had not been naive about the will, about the hands that would reach for it when grief softened the locks. The message was spare and surgical: when doubt arrives, open Alan's box. The box itself had been a long-suffering relic in the master closet, a repository not of jewelry or medals but of the quiet residue of a marriage that had weathered every possible storm. Inside, Tracy found the weight she had been expecting. The real will, its seal unbroken, its logic relentless. It was not a surprise so much as a diagnosis. Monica had understood the family's fault lines and ridden across them with the plain language of stewardship. It felt, to Tracy, like being handed a set of reins at full gallop. Elsewhere under the same roof, commotion chose comedy for a mask. Out back, the dog who had made himself the household's unlikely archivist, seized the thick packet of house papers as if they were a toy invented to be rescued, and dashed past a crowd of Quartermaines too startled to decide between laughter and panic. Drew lunged after the runaway archivist with the look of a man who sees a small disaster at the exact moment it decides to become large. The chase ricocheted down a corridor that had once carried servants with silver trays and now echoed with the slap of determined shoes. Veronica, Ronnie, Bard stood at the crossroads of the chaos, suggesting with brittle composure that a duplicate could be drawn up and everyone might stop behaving like a farce. But Drew, flanked by a lawyer whose conscience had acquired its own shadows, Martin Gray, wanted no pause, no reconsideration, no return to nuance. They wanted signatures and closure, and they wanted them before the House remembered how to say no. No family gathered out of habit and heat. Michael Corinthos, Harrison Chase, Brooke Lynn, Ned, Olivia, each stepped into the foyer drama with the particular gravity their histories afforded them. Quartermaine confrontations are orchestral, even the bystanders carry melody. Cody Bell, part cowboy, part errand angel, corralled Outback with a patience that made the whole spectacle look rehearsed. When Cody pried the treasured packet from Canine Triumph and handed it over, the room exhaled. Drew's shoulders squared. The papers were back in the world of men who believed a document could end a conversation. Pressure followed. Drew, energized by the return of the paperwork he regarded as a passport to peace, leaned on Ronnie to sign away the house with a finality that promised no further dealings with Quartermaine tempests. Martin, always the lawyer who could talk a storm into sounding like weather, added the gloss of inevitability. Ronnie's suggestion to wait, born of nerves, caution, or guilt, died in the air. The pen was produced. A table was cleared. In the old mansion, this was the modern incarnation of ritual. Not a toast, but a transaction. Tracy entered at the hinge of the moment. She arrived not like a savior or a tyrant, but like the keeper of a story reclaiming its chapters. In her hands, wrapped in the quiet authority of someone who never apologizes for being right, was Monica's true will. She announced no victory and sought no permission. The document itself made the argument, its language exact, its priorities unmistakable. The old house, this stubborn citadel of inheritance, betrayal, reconciliation, and roast turkeys burned amid boardroom battles, was not to be sold under the pressure of a counterfeit consensus. The terms were clear. The owner of the future had already been named by the woman who had saved 1,000 strangers and battled down every private grief without surrendering her standards. For a heartbeat, the room stalled at the edge of disbelief. Then Ronnie did the single rash thing left available to someone who has run out of exits. She tore the revealed will as if paper could defeat ink, as if a jagged line could separate her from complicity. The act was not courage and not madness, it was the exhaustion of a conscience that has waited too long to tell the truth. The sound of tearing vellum was somehow smaller than its consequence, a paper cut across the family's collective pulse. Words, when they came, were finally honest. Ronnie admitted what the nervous twitches and avoidant glances had foreshadowed. Martin had recruited her into a scheme she did not have the stomach to execute, and the mansion sale was the gleaming stage for a cheap performance. Meeting Tracy, blunt, unyielding, disinterested in the theater of politeness, had stripped the script of its camouflage. She had snapped at the accusation because it landed where her own doubt had been living. Drew, caught in the blast radius, insisted on his ignorance. Ronnie, with the flat relief of a person unloading a weight that had the density of months, agreed that as far as she knew, he had not been in on the rot. The revelation did not absolve him, it simply moved him to a different part of the chessboard. Tracy's answer to the moment was command. She ordered Drew out, not as punishment but as triage. Surgery requires a sterile field. Her focus narrowed to the infection. Martin would be arrested, the masquerade would end with cuffs instead of contracts. Harrison Chase, whose badge had been a witness to too many families discovering their weakest link, stepped forward with procedural calm and clasped law around Martin's wrists. It should have been an ending. Instead, Ned, always an architect of contingency, suggested a different corridor through the crisis. There are times in Port Charles when public justice is too blunt an instrument for a private wound. So Martin did not go directly to a cell. He went to the office of Laura Collins, who had long ago learned how to balance mercy with authority without letting either dim the other. He arrived there carrying the quiet of someone who senses the roof of his fabrications collapsing. Laura read the situation with the speed of a veteran. This was not merely an errant attorney captured in a gambit gone wrong. It was evidence of a larger carelessness with trust in a town already suffering too much of it. Trouble settled into the room with him like a bad smell, and Laura began to trace its source with questions the narrative would eventually need to answer in court. Back at the mansion, the newly rescued will, ruined physically but unrebutted legally, passed into Michael's hands. He read with the concentration of a man who has learned, the hard way, that expectations are not contracts. The lines were unforgiving in their simplicity. The house belonged to Tracy, not to him. There were no riddles hidden in the clauses, no charming codicils to soften the blow. It was a decision Monica had anchored to a particular faith, that stewardship is not always a matter of sentiment, and that the one who can bear the weight should be the one to carry it. Michael accepted what he read with the same controlled dignity that had guided him through darker storms. If he felt the sting, he let it live behind his eyes, not in his posture. The revelation landed on Tracy with a complexity she did not attempt to hide. Triumph would have been too small, nostalgia too cheap. What crossed her features instead was a weather system, a sudden brightness that looked like vindication, and a softer, more vulnerable light that looked like gratitude. She loved this house in the brittle, argumentative way a Quartermaine loves anything that has the power to define them. To be charged with it by Monica felt less like a windfall and more like a final assignment from a colleague who always insisted that family must be tended with the same rigor as a patient in crisis. The study's old clock kept time with new authority. The house had chosen, through Monica's pen. It would not be sold like a parcel, parceled like an asset, or converted into an ending disguised as a fresh start. In the aftermath, the characters rearranged themselves around the new reality. Brooke Lynn measured the shift with the instincts of a songwriter who knows when the key has changed. Olivia, acutely sensitive to currents others call intuition, read in Tracy's stance the relief of a battle decided and the onset of the next campaign, fixing what had been loosened. Ned, who has always regarded the family name as both tether and catapult, seemed steadier in the knowledge that the house would not be lost to a transaction that could not explain itself. Chase filed the moment under resolved but not over. Legal consequences have long tails in this town. Cody scratched Outback's ears in a small ceremony of forgiveness for the dog who, by accident or genius, had delayed a signing just long enough for the truth to arrive dressed as a deed. Drew walked the line between hurt and humility, recalibrating what it means to be responsible for a mess you did not intend but nevertheless set in motion. The architecture of the will, once decoded, revealed Monica's familiar ethic. She did not mistake care for sentiment. She had anticipated tampering the way surgeons anticipate complications and had left a breadcrumb trail into Alan's box, trusting the one person stubborn enough to follow it. It was not that she loved others less. It was that she believed stewardship demands a certain ruthlessness in defense of what cannot be measured in resale value. The mansion was not square footage, it was a ledger of hard-won reconciliations and expensive lessons, a home that had survived being both battleground and sanctuary. In leaving it to Tracy, Monica made a call that would be argued at dinner tables and in hushed kitchen corners, but which had the ring of sanity in a world too fond of shortcuts. By evening, the house resumed its old habits. The study reclaimed its hush. Hallways remembered the weight of fewer footsteps. Yet the air had altered. Scandal tends to thin oxygen. Truth, even when sharp, can restore it. The torn wool would be mended by process. The confession would find its way into affidavits. Martin would discover that cleverness is not a cure for consequence, not in Port Charles, not under the watch of people who have lived too long to be impressed by detours. The Quartermaines, chastened but intact, did what they always do after a public unraveling. They tidied the edges and prepared for the next surprise with the performative calm of veterans. Tracy lingered in the doorway to Alan's old belongings, hand at the lintel the way one might greet a chapel. Gratitude, for her, rarely took the form of softness. It became instead a new resolve to punish laziness in herself and others, to defend the home from nostalgia's counterfeit and opportunism's grin. She would not let the house become a trophy for whomever spoke the loudest about love while quietly treating it as leverage. Her eyes found the chair where Monica had so often graded the family's performance against the scalpel's edge of her expectations. The inheritance was not an indulgence. It was a charge. News traveled, as it always does, on currents no one can map. By the time the last lamp was switched off, people far from the mansion understood that a sale had been stopped, a scheme exposed, a line redrawn in a home that had refused to be translated into escrow. The Quartermaines had once again treated catastrophe like rehearsal, and rehearsal like ritual. Tomorrow would bring statements, filings, apologies with edges on them, and perhaps a dinner where the menu pretended history could be digested with dessert. But tonight belonged to the quiet knowledge that Monica, even in absence, had organized the day. She had left her family a riddle and the key to solve it. She had placed the real will among the relics of a marriage that had trained her to expect everything and surrender nothing. She had trusted Tracy to recognize the heartbeat of the house and to defend it when paperwork tried to pass itself off as fate. It was not a fairy tale victory. The dog would misbehave again. Ambition would circle back in smarter shoes. Drew would have to repair trust in rooms that do not offer fresh starts lightly. Martin would face a ledger balanced without flattery. Michael would tuck the disappointment into a drawer with other lessons he intends to teach his children about what it means to want something and still accept when it is not yours to have. Yet the mansion stood with its spine straightened, its windows reflecting a dusk that looked, for once, like a promise kept rather than a bargain struck. In Port Charles, the difference between those two things is the distance between chaos and continuity. Tonight, that distance was measured in a torn page, a confession, a set of handcuffs, a meticulous line in a will, and the particular, complicated gratitude on Tracy Quartermaine's face when the light finally gave up the day.